A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 14, co-powered by Star Health Insurance. I'm Ritwika Gupta, and today we are deep diving into the travel industry, one of India's fastest growing sectors. From weekend getaways to cultural experiences and AI-powered trip planning, the way Indians are traveling is changing rapidly. This is also creating new opportunities for businesses across the ecosystem. So what are the biggest trends defining India's travel economy? And where are the next growth opportunities emerging? To decode all of this, on the show tonight, I'm in conversation with Neel Ghose, travel and destinations expert, Skyscanner India. Neel, welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow. Looking forward to a conversation.
Thanks for having us, Ritwika.
So let's start with the big picture. India has emerged as one of the world's fastest growing travel markets. What's driving this growth, and how would you describe the business of travel?
So India's travel market has been fueled by a combination of rising disposable incomes, improved connectivity, and digital adoption. What we see today that travelers are prioritizing much more meaningful experiences, whether it's a weekend getaway, a cultural festival, or for that matter, even an international adventure. We're seeing that the traveler is becoming much more intentional with time. People are generally planning earlier, exploring many more destinations. They're using a variety of technology and tools to kind of get where they are. So essentially, the business of travel is not just about getting from one place to another. It's about enabling people to kind of discover the best experiences in line with their budget, aspirations, and their experiences.
Right, so let's unpack that a little further. Now, domestic travel continues to remain strong. What are the biggest trends you're seeing in the way Indians are traveling within the country today?
So you're right about that. The domestic travel continues to be very resilient. But the motivations are evolving. So we recently come up with our latest Travel India report. And what we're seeing is that 84% of our Indian travelers are actually much more interested in culture than they ever were. And 67% are actually planning holidays around these cultural experiences, such as heritage festivals and like food trails, etc. Now, what that's essentially saying is that the question for the Indian traveler is moving from where do I want to go to what do I want to experience? And destination is just an answer. So that's the fundamental shift which we are seeing, that what we initially thought was maybe just a rising trend, today is actually a fundamental behavioral shift where the Indian traveler is leaning more and more towards culture in their overall travel experience.
Right, so what's interesting is that how people travel is changing as well. We have often spoken about travel being driven by beaches or mountains, but increasingly culture seems to be becoming a key motivator. Talk to us about Skyscanner's newly launched India Culture Travel Index.
So firstly, Ritvika, maybe I'll give a sense of like how we arrived at these conclusions. So Skyscanner is a global travel leader and obviously has the largest flights audience in the world. So what we sit on is millions of data points in these travelers. So one, we've crunched these data points to kind of find deep insights. And two is we kind of layered that with qualitative surveys and reviews of 2,000 odd travelers to kind of really understand why Indian travelers are traveling the way they are. So if I think about like what is leading to this culture-led travel, it's a very simple framework, which is very memorable, which is called Roots, which is really helping Indian travelers discover their roots. R is basically rediscovering heritage. O is open discovery or the use of social media and other tools to really understand newer places to go to from a cultural lens. Then there's O is once in a year experience, which is basically festivals and the power it has to play in this traveler's kind of next travel journey. T is tradition and taste. And like we've seen increasingly that food and food trails play a big role in where people are actually going to. And the last part is smarter planning, which is S, the roots part of it. And that's where Skyscanner comes in. Like, how do we help the traveler go to exactly where they want with the best rates and at the same time discover new places in their cultural immersion?
Right, and I think that also reflects a broader shift in traveler preferences. So, what are travelers expecting from their journeys today, and how are these influencing the destinations they choose?
So I think there's been a marked shift from, like, just say itinerary to authenticity, right? Travelers, like right now, their journeys are much more personal, much more connected to who they are. So they're looking to kind of like not just find photographs or visit places, but they're looking to like really create memories. What we've also seen is that 81% of our travelers are open to like lesser known destinations or hidden gems. And almost 90% of our travelers really feel that it benefits local communities. So that's a big part of what we're seeing, that these are not just typical touristy places where people have gone over the years and that's where our travelers are gravitating. But through the advent of social media, through more discovery, they're actually much more open to explore offbeat paths. And we're seeing that in their pursuit towards like a more culturally nuanced travel journey.
And I'm sure those choices are creating ripple effects far beyond tourism. Tell us, how is culture-led travel creating opportunities for smaller businesses and MSMEs? From regional cuisines, homestays to artisans, performers preserving India's living heritage, how is it building a much bigger business ecosystem?
Well, that's a great question. And we firmly believe that culture-led travel is a force multiplier, towards local economies. Maybe I'll start with an example, right? We've seen that almost 72% of our travelers are gravitating towards festivals, or they're traveling for a certain festival. If I take Durga Puja in Calcutta, where I'm from, so Durga Puja has thousands of pandals in every neighborhood of the city, and every part of Calcutta is kind of it's almost competitive as to how creative they get. They employ thousands of artisans, thousands of craftsmen, thousands of like let's say caterers to kind of manage that 5 day extravaganza. Now, ever since Durga Puja has become a UNESCO heritage recognized festival, viewership or even people traveling to it has gone up, and that has also had effects on the economy. So that is something which, whether at a level as large as that, or even like if it comes to like visiting a local heritage site where we're talking about guides, we're talking about artisans, we're talking about homestays, there will be a strong multiplier effect with respect to culture-led travel. And it is not just good for the travelers, it's also good for the communities they visit.
Sure. So technology is also reshaping every stage of the travel experience. It is transforming the way we travel. How is Skyscanner using AI and tools to help travelers plan smarter?
That's a very relevant question. Thanks for that, Ritwika. So before even getting into how to use AI, let me zoom out and kind of mention that Skyscanner has the largest flights audience globally. So what that means is we process almost 110 billion prices every single day. So basically, that basically means that we have one of the richest travel data sets, which LLMs, or for that matter, anyone using AI can use as a very rich source of information. So that is something which we really bring into this AI journey
Right.
of when we work with our partners, of having access to like billions of data points, which will help kind of make a traveler journey more intuitive using AI. When it comes to tools, we have a flagship tool called Explore with AI. What that basically means is it's a very simple uh, natural language tool where you can ask Skyscanner very simple basic questions like, look, I'm a fan of cricket. Can you share me like what are the top cricket stadiums I need to go to? And then what Skyscanner will throw out is probably the cheapest places to like London for Lords or Bombay for Wankhede, and what's the right time to kind of go visit there. Similarly, like if you have any other nuance interests with respect to culture or heritage, like you can make it very targeted, and Skyscanner can kind of help you with that AI journey. I think the last part is also that what we're seeing is travel adoption in India using AI. But
Sure.
we've seen that Indians have the highest adoption of travel, which is 86% of Indians are actually
Right.
comfortable using AI for planning out their travel journeys. And that's a big part of like our plans in India. We recently partnered and launched our own app in ChatGPT. So for folks who are basically looking for the next travel inspiration, they can literally tag Skyscanner and ask what they want to do exactly. And I think the last part is internally as a company, it's become very much part of our ethos or DNA, where every conversation, every problem we're trying to tackle, anything we're doing with data, we're trying to like go 3 levels deeper and really become AI first in our approach. And that's kind of changing the ability to serve our travelers real time as these times evolve.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 14, co-powered by Star Health Insurance, in conversation with Neel Ghose, travel and destinations expert, Skyscanner India. And another big shift we are witnessing is happening beyond the metros. Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are becoming increasingly important, both as a source of travelers and as destinations in their own right. What trends are you seeing, from these markets?
No, it's absolutely on point. I feel tier two and tier three cities are not just feeders, they've slowly become protagonists to the India story, both in terms of travelers and in terms of destinations. Some of the destinations which we've seen being prominently featured in our report is Kochi, which is obviously known for its rich cultural history and also like its backwaters. Udaipur has really like topped a lot of our charts in travel in terms of uh, hosting some of the best hotels in the world, and at the same time having like these natural lakes, which are a big source of attraction for tourists. We've also seen like smaller towns and cities, like let's say the Kohima in Nagaland, uh, being more and more explored by our travelers, not just for its wildlife or greenery, but also for like things like the Hornbill Music Festival. From a traveler market, we're seeing a lot of decent pricing and travel for tier two and tier three cities. The names which kind of come to mind are Hyderabad or Jaipur, or for that matter, Ahmedabad. We're seeing a steep increase in international travel in these markets and also Chennai. And I think that these trends are here to stay. It's not just a fleeting trail. This is something which we see is evolving and growing every single month.
Sure. Now, today, no conversation about travel is complete without talking about social media. We have seen destinations become popular almost overnight thanks to social media. How much influence do platforms like Instagram and YouTube have on travel decisions today?
That's a very relevant question. And I think the one line answer is massive. Again, what our travelers are seeing is that 42% of our travelers are actually being influenced by social media. And by social media, I'm just using a broad term. This could be through Instagram, or could be through LinkedIn, or could even be through Spotify. Personally, for me, as a traveler, I am addicted to this Indian podcast by a historian called William Dalrymple. Even recently, when I went to the Taj, I kind of like completely the narrative of how it was built and what is the history behind it changed.
Right.
So this is a big trend which we're seeing. The other thing which we're also seeing is that because of social media, and because people like really want to do their research before going for cultural led travel, what we're seeing is that people are being much more intentional. So typically, travelers would probably take 1 to 2 months to decide where they're going. Now, because you can't really postpone a festival or you can't really like recreate it, there are specific fixed dates. What we see is almost 40% of our travelers are planning 3 to 6 months in advance. So what that basically means is it's a very intentional, very deliberate, very well-researched traveler, and they're always looking for more inspiration. So social media in a nutshell has almost democratized the discovery of travel within India, and we expect it to continue growing with the times to come.
Interesting. Neel, as you know, Leaders of Tomorrow is watched by a lot of MSMEs and startup founders, many of whom are building businesses in this space. What advice would you give entrepreneurs looking to create the next big travel business?
So I see more than advice, I'll probably zoom out a bit into the Skyscanner story, and that might give some principles as to how to build in this space. So Skyscanner started around 20 years back in Edinburgh, and our founder, Gareth, was actually looking for places to go ski. And they were all different prices. So he just put it all together in a spreadsheet. And fast forward like 20 years later, we're in 180 countries in 37 languages. India is today our largest and most visited market. But the one thing which I've seen hold true is in every single decision, whether it's product or marketing, or for that matter, even commercially, the traveler is in the center of every decision. And we have a very simple culture statement that says traveler first. So for anyone building in this space, irrespective of whether whatever space it is in within travel, I think as long as you put the traveler front and center of most of your decisions, really try to understand their pain points and really try to understand like what is your unique solution, which can kind of like influence and create a much better experience. That should be the first principle behind any build for any entrepreneur in travel.
And well, looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunities for India's travel and tourism sector over the next 5 years or so?
Right. So I think that's the fundamental insight which we got in this report, that the question in Indian travelers is not where are we going anymore. It is what do we want to experience. So culture-led tourism is here to stay. And that's clearly reflecting from the data. So while we've seen a baseline shift of like 84% of people being much more interested in culture as a concept than they're going about traveling, or people going much in heaps and droves towards heritage sites or festivals, we don't think this is a temporary trend. We think this is a baseline shift and this will continue happening. Also, if you zoom out and look at India, is probably world-class in terms of cultural diversity and heritage. We have almost 43 UNESCO heritage sites. We have 3,700 monuments. Most of these have barely been discovered. And I feel like this is just the beginning of that journey for the Indian traveler and going deeper into it. The culture is here to stay. And I think the second part is the rise of international travel. We've seen with rising affluence, we've seen with just more discoverability. Even in Skyscanner, like 2 or 3 years back, our domestic traffic was around 80%, but today it's probably like 50-50. And so international travel is here to stay. Again, this is very heavily skewed by cultural significance. We've seen more and more people being interested by Japan and Vietnam and Thailand. And these are cultural places which have really attracted the Indian tourists. But we see that continuing in the years to come. And people who are building in that space and that are likely to kind of like keep adding value to the Indian traveler.
Fantastic, Neel. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing these valuable insights into the future of travel and the opportunities it presents for businesses across India.
Thanks, Ritwika. Thank you.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 14, co-powered by Star Health Insurance. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.